Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about addictions and when we know it's a problem, how addictions can affect our relationship, and how to bring rock bottom up to someone who's suffering addiction rather than them having to achieve it themselves. But before we get into it, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
It was birthday week.
Favourite week of the year?
Yeah. So because my birthday is early March, it always kind of sneaks up because February's such a short month and then it's so early in March that it's like, boom, here.
Bam.
Yeah, but I was spoilt with lots and lots of deliveries of donuts and cupcakes and flowers and champagne and cake and more donuts and just so many delicious things. But more than that, I had two of my best girlfriends in the whole world visit from interstate, come and celebrate. My birthday lands right around the time of the Mardi Gras parade every year. So I generally link celebrating love and my birthday together in one. So we had, a really nice rainbow room themed viewing party at home. Everyone got all sexed up in glitter and all the things. So it was really, really beautiful, but it went super fast too.
Yeah, it did. Weekend went really quick.
Yeah, but I really like birthdays because they're a really great opportunity to just kind of reflect on the 12 months that were. As much as all of the excitement and fun and external stuff fueled me up, I also really enjoyed taking some time on the day before my birthday to reflect on what this last 12 months has been. And for me, it was really challenging. There was a lot of really big challenges and things in the last 12 months. So it was nice to reflect on how far I've come and, set some intention for the next 12 months. What about you? What fueled you up? You were party bitch. You were the absolute A-team 2IC to my creative vision.
Well, it definitely fueled me up to see you so excited about your party and your birthday and everything. Just this time of year, like you always have a birthday week, don't you? Like it's not a birthday, it's a birthday week. And so just the whole week.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a thing. But yeah, it is definitely nice to see you really excited about that and excited to see your friends and excited to have a few drinks and to have a party and to really celebrate. It's like, it is your favorite day of the year. So it's really nice to see you so excited and fueled up about it.
Yeah, I kind of had two parties, because my birthday was on the Friday, so I went out for lunch with friends. I had mimosas. I got Messina, which ice cream, Messina ice cream, next level. There was Vietnamese food. There was drag queens, and that wasn't even my party. I was just celebrating on my birthday, so it was fabulous.
It was.
Yeah, so I'm feeling very fueled up and very loved.
Yeah, amazing. But now, here's this week's guest.
Today we've got Rob Lohman joining us. Rob has been sober since 2001 and currently helps people suffering from substance abuse to find freedom from addiction and incarceration. He does this through sharing his testimony, professional interventions and recovery coaching, advocacy. He's a self-published author and is also the host of Beyond the Bars radio podcast and Addiction, Freedom and Faith podcast. Rob now invests in the lives of those wanting to see positive changes, whether it's coming out of addiction, prison, or just wanting more for their lives. He's a dynamic speaker and shares an extremely powerful journey on persistence, faith, and inspiration. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Well, I am glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries. That's a pretty tense intro.
It covers a lot of bases.
It does. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But before we dig into it, I would love to frame up for everyone. How do you define addiction?
Addiction is, there's so many unique aspects to addiction in itself, right? But I feel like it's anything that is blocking someone from emotional intimacy with themselves because addiction can be substances, it can be sex, porn, TV, Facebook, all these things, but those are going to block you from really intimacy with yourself to be able to have intimacy with other people.
I mean, you're on the Date Forever podcast and we chat about that relationship with self and dating yourself and your chosen person for forever. So yeah, I think this is going to be a really cool conversation. So I'd love to know, tell us a little bit about your story with addiction.
Wow, yeah, 14 to 29, just insert crazy story. But I found alcohol it was actually at a Christian youth event in Texas. It was I didn't find it, but it was my first drunk, I guess you could say.
First dabbling in it. Yep.
Yeah, alcohol. Well, because alcohol was always around my family, so it was kind of a social gathering. So it was the allure, like this is fun. I didn't know I had alcoholics in my ancestry, and I didn't know the chaos alcohol ensued and addiction and mental health and abuse and things like that. So I never knew that. I just saw alcohol as like, oh, this is fun. People seem to be cutting loose. And when I had that first drunk at 14, it was kind of like, okay, you had me at, and it was off to the races for the next 15 years. It was just pretty insane roller coaster for sure.
And alcohol is probably one of those challenging things where it is everywhere and it is seen as while you are a kid, it is seen as something that adults do when they're socializing and that's just what you do.
Yeah, and you have to get sneaky. I remember moving these Coors Lights around in my parents' refrigerator to be like, okay, there's 12 of them, so I got to make it look like there's still 12 in the fridge. And I would move things around and play those games, right? Or even, I remember in Michigan at our lake house, we would take the back hinges off of my grandmother's liquor, kind of like, it wasn't a cabinet, it was like this big, long chest. And we would take the hinges off the back and just take a bunch of booze out and mix it all together, put water in there, and then put the hinges back on, thinking we were really smart and stealth until she one day finally caught on. But you have to get really, really clever with not only trying to hide your addiction, but also trying to get it when you're underage.
The drinking age in the States is 21, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, Australia, it's 18. So we got legal access a little bit earlier. But my mom's a winemaker and Nathan and I both grew up in a wine region, a tourism wine region where that's one of the primary industries. So I resonate with that as well. The alcohol was just everywhere and it was quite a normal, accessible thing. And I'm quite lucky that my parents helped me develop quite a healthy relationship with alcohol very early on. Like it was very normal for me to be like, I don't know, maybe 15, 16, having a glass of wine, like with dinner or like over a meal in a really social way. So a lot of the novelty was taken out of it for me. And a lot of my friends, like who were not permitted alcohol ever, were having brothers and sisters of friends buying booze and hiding it in backpacks and smuggling it to parties and stuff. Whereas my parents were like, here's your 4-pack of vodka cruisers, have fun. Like that's the boundary and that's the limit. But it is interesting how those kind of things, whether or not you're submerged in them as a teenager or as a child, whether or not you go all in or totally opposite. Because my mum was a smoker and I watched her struggle with that addiction for years and years and years. And she tried to give up so many times. And I've never smoked a cigarette. I look at them and I just think it's the most foul thing. Is. So one thing was totally normalized for me and the other I'm so far away from.
Yeah. And especially, again, because you had a healthy relationship with kind of not relationship, but just understanding of alcohol at a young age where most people don't. It's not talked about. It's like, we're not going to talk about the family history here. We're just going to let you figure out on your own. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, your uncle, your aunt, your cousins, by the way, you have alcoholics everywhere. Like, why didn't you tell me these things? I don't know if it would have helped at all, but in families in general, when I work with them and do coaching, I talk through that with them as well.
Yeah. So as part of your addiction or your relationship with substances, what was it that made you realize that you'd hit rock bottom? And when did you decide to make a change?
Well, I definitely knew I had a problem in the beginning. It was very evident. I got a lot of trouble but I always got out of trouble because I was a smooth talker. And I thought that was a gift, but you look back, I was like, that wasn't really a gift. That was just a tool that you used a lot. But, just again, throughout my life, I knew there was a problem and I knew I should probably stop. But then you add in smoking pot and you add in some acid and mushrooms and other things. You're like, oh, great. And then you have gambling going on and then you have sex and then you have, all sorts of a cornucopia of things going on. And you're like, I don't know which one I really need to get rid of, but I know what I'm doing is not healthy. And so for me, just fast forward because, the drunkalogs are the drunkalogs, right? People can probably insert their own crazy story. It's like, whoa, I can't believe you did that. So I can't either. In fact, I don't remember half the things I did because I was get drunk and drive 8 nights a week kind of guy and just go out all the time from, high school all the way till 29 years old. And there was definitely a lot of scary times. But in those scary times, there was reflection and just kind of, I don't want to do this again. But I don't think life's going to be boring if I don't drink. Everything I did involved that. And so fast forward to really 2001, and I was just going through some dark times. I hated who I'd become. I was about $67,000 in credit card debt because I also had a gambling addiction. But, I would close the bars down in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and drive 2.5 hours to casinos and drive back and have no clue I even went to the casino.
Wow.
That's scary stuff, right? Yeah. And I remember one thing, since we're talking about relationships and dating and marriage and fun stuff like that. I remember there was the girl in my childhood. I just totally loved this girl, right? And then we moved to Texas, and that was kind of it. And then I always wanted to get back and find her someday, and I did, in my drinking days. And she went to a New Year's Eve party with me in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I was a drunk fool. And I remember her just looking at me and just the eyes just told me I don't want this. And I was like, and I'm not ready for the Bible beater yet because I don't want to date a Bible beater. But it was and my heart was broken because I had an opportunity to date the girl that I just loved as a kid. But because I was a drunken fool at the time, it was she was smart. She's I don't want anything to do with this guy. And if that's kind of going on when people are getting ready to start dating, right? It's oh my gosh, this person's a total alcoholic, he or she is, or, they got sex addiction problems or they have gambling problems and stuff like that. I'm just going to put a little clue out there. It's not really going to get better if you get married and that's going on and you haven't dealt with it. We think the person's going to fix us, right? But that's not the case. And so just a little thing out there, if people are dating the alcoholic and the thing, and they're hey, I'm going to fix this person, wait till it's fixed and then get into long-term relationship because it's easier to say I don't. It's harder to say I don't when you already said it.
Yeah. That was a question I had for you is when do we define that someone has the difference between a problem with porn or working or exercise or food or illegal substances or alcohol, whatever the thing is? When does it transfer from being a problem to an addiction?
When someone is asking that question, I would say it's if you're asking the question, there's a problem. But also, when you look at it, because people don't like to be called an alcoholic, right?
No.
Even when I do interventions and work with families and stuff, I'm not oh, you're an alcoholic. It's all from a place of love. But when you can say things
a bit of a drinker.
Hey, Fred. Yeah, it's hey, Fred, do you have a dependency on alcohol or work or things to bring fulfillment? Well, yeah, I totally have dependency on it. Without it, I'd go crazy. Okay, there might be an addiction here, but people get easier, softer blow when you say, do you think you have a dependency on it? Oh, yeah, 100%. Okay. Well, maybe we look at the dependency and before we use words like addiction, and then you get people to that place of okay, this is actually getting in the way of my relationships and certain things. I know you'd asked me earlier, when did I get to the end of my drinking? But I want to share a quick story of when I got to the end of my gambling addiction. And this might answer your question about when do you know it's a problem. I knew I needed to stop. Because when my wife and I would argue or fight and stuff, it was I'm going to the casinos or something and take off and I'm going to show you and go, I'm going to hurt you and hurt myself, right, at the same time. But there wasn't a lot of that going on. But what it was I loved scratch tickets. I don't know if y'all have scratch tickets. Yep. And so scratch tickets or pull cards and people have them. But what I realized one night, I had a Netflix movie and I wanted to take it back to across the street. So I didn't want to pay $1.67 again to rent that movie. And I was getting frustrated because the kids were doing their thing. And I was just I just need to go before 9:30 and take this movie back. But what I really wanted to do was just go to the gas station and get a sleeve of scratch tickets, some Oreo cookies, and a coffee. And I would sit in my car and just scratch. I'm what a winner that is, right? Get out of the house. But that clicked with me right there. I was man, holy cow, I am getting agitated at my family because I want to go gamble. It had nothing to do with the $1.67 on the Netflix movie. But that right there was my sign that says, dude, I know you're working on this, but this is a problem because it's now really affecting your relationships because you are getting agitated. And so that's kind of a telltale sign of some people and thinking, well, I don't want to do the dishes. I just got to go to Home Depot real quick, but they're going to get alcohol, right? Or if it's affecting your relationships, it's definitely worth looking at. And so you don't have to use a guy like me with interventions and it gets that bad. Okay, we need to get an interventionist in here and get some serious help. So there's a lot of tools and things like that too we can talk about later, but it's just, if someone's asking the question, there probably is a problem with the substance or the addiction.
So what was your relationship like with yourself at that time?
Oh, wow. At which time was this, the gambling? I'm talking about
yeah, while you're in the thick of your addiction, what did that relationship look like? Was there one?
Yeah, well, so I had a horrible relationship with money. That was for sure. So, and at this time in my life, this is going now into 11 years without substances. Okay. But
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it was like getting rid of the substances was actually the easy part. Really, it was because the night that I found recovery, let's just touch on that real quick. I'll get to the gambling thing again later, but I think the progression's important because as people are in their relationships with other people, they're seeing these things happen as they're listening to your show right now. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is totally my husband, or this is my wife, or this is my kid, or my mom, or my grandpa, right? Most people have someone with an addiction of substances in their family somewhere, right? And I want my family to be the one that breaks that generational sin, that generational curse and struggle, right? But for me, it was 2001, and I was just really I hated who I saw in the mirror. So my relationship with me was awful. I hated who I was. I was, internally, I would cuss at myself, call myself names. I was dealing with suicide ideation. So that's how bad I hated myself. And just from the stuff I had done, again, I'm like credit card debt, like I'm sinking, I'm flailing, but outside, you could not tell. I was happy-go-lucky Rob. I was like, yeah, let's go on a date. Let's go here. But meantime, I'm just like, man, I want to just drive my car off a cliff. And there were times with the suicide ideation piece, I would actually see my car veer off the highway and hit a median and explode. And I would see myself dead on the side of the highway. Right. But hey, I had a bunch of girlfriends and I was, had money in the bank but I was going bankrupt. And it just got to this point one night where I was hanging out in a bar in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it was music and girls and everything. And then the bar got completely dead silent. And I audibly heard the words, "You're done." And then the bar got really loud again. And that was my moment of clarity. I looked at my buddy Sean and I said, man, I think I'm finally done drinking. Like, this is my answered prayer. I think I'm done. And so I drove home that night, kind of like sober guy in my mind, and because I feel like I had a shift, but I was highly intoxicated. And I went home that night and just kind of on autopilot. When you're in fight or flight in your life, your autonomic nervous system is just driving you, subconsciously. And you're just going and going. You don't even know it, right? And that's what was happening with me. The self-depravity, the self-loathing, the self-hatred was so heightened that I didn't even know what was going on. And the next thing I knew, I had walked up 12 stairs to my one-bedroom apartment, put 350 pounds on my barbell. The next thing I knew is I unhinged my elbows. It's like time just stopped. And what I feel happened is God stopped time, grabbed that barbell, and was just like, not today. And my dog came up and started nudging my knee with his head, with his little puppy dog head tilt, and just kind of, what are you doing, Dad? And my first thought was, oh my gosh, who's going to feed you tomorrow morning? And then the good stuff was going through. And again, this is milliseconds of time because I can't even hold 350 pounds of weight, but I know God carries the weight of the world. And when I look back on that now, he was carrying my weight at that time that I couldn't handle. And he helped me put the barbell back on the rack. And it was like transformation happened like that. It was literally divine intervention and release from my addiction to substances. And it was just gone. I mean, my aunt took me to a recovery meeting the next day, and I found recovery as a single guy and just loved it. And I didn't go through detox or withdrawal or anything. It was just like I had no cravings. It just left me forever and hasn't come back in 21 years.
Yeah, wow. So was that healing from addiction from everything, like from alcohol, from gambling, and all those sorts of things?
No, gambling came 11 years later or longer than that. But what it was I used those tools to break free from other stuff. And it was all in the right timing in my life. I wanted to quit dipping. I was like, dip in Copenhagen, because you were from Texas before, so you got to dip your Copenhagen and all that good stuff. But I wanted to quit, and I tried one day, like on my own accord. And I remember I had a full can of tobacco in my car, and I kind of packed it like that and put one in. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I threw the can out the car. I did that like 12 times that day. And I just said, okay, I'm obviously not ready yet. And it was a few weeks later, a friend of mine, I was hanging out at his house and he took his retainer out with his like fake teeth, put them on the counter. I said, man, I didn't know you had fake teeth. He goes, yeah. I said, what was that from? He said, dipping tobacco. And I said, I'm done. And it was just gone. And then I kept applying the tools of recovery to that as well as I went forward. But I never knew I needed to work on the gambling thing until, I just got married, and the other pressures of being a father and a husband and a business owner. I was very immature and I was not very open and honest with my wife about how I was feeling about a lot of things like that. So for me, I started isolating again in a relationship that's supposed to be fruitful and multiply, right? And be a blessing and those things. And there were a lot of things kind of going on with me and with her in the beginning, which were tough. But yeah, I just didn't know I needed to work on that stuff till I knew I needed to work on it.
So Rob, one of the things that you said was to touch on earlier was that if you are dating or in a relationship with someone who's demonstrating some behaviors that look like a problem, not to marry them. What does that look like? How do we, maybe if we've identified some of these things in a partner, what is the best practice? What does that person do?
Yeah. And I wouldn't say don't marry them. I would just say,
not yet.
Wait, not yet. Maybe delay it. And I say that because I've had people I know, one half of the relationship I know, and they know that the other person is struggling with this, and they marry them anyway, knowing this. And it just turned into hell for such a long time because the addiction is only going to heighten, right? Because when you're single and you live on your own, you can do stuff that you wouldn't normally do if you're now married and in the house with somebody, because then you got to get sneaky with it. And so for me, I think it's great to have the conversation. I think people should have the conversation about like, what's the family history here? Is there, and honestly, these are things to talk about, I think are great. Like, is there mental health in the family? Let's say you've never had anyone in your family had mental health issues, and you're marrying someone and everyone in their family's had bipolar, maybe borderline personality disorder, some mental illnesses and stuff. And it's like almost everybody. Well, getting into that, you need to understand that, because that's what you're going to get into. And if you don't understand it, then you start judging the other person and not being sympathetic and empathetic. And you start creating what I call these false narratives about the other person that really aren't even true. It's just a manifestation of like past relationships. So knowing family history, I think, is really important. If you have there's the one family I'm working with right now. And I remember the guy just said, well, every man in our family is an alcoholic, so we're all going to be alcoholics. And they just came to that conclusion. And every marriage in that family history is horrible. Like, it's riddled with domestic violence and all these things. So knowing that going into it, and even people have had like, alcoholic dads. Sometimes you marry your dad, right? It's kind of like you marry the alcoholic. My wife's father had an alcohol problem for a while, and not at the end, but she marries a guy that's sober that used to have an alcohol problem, right? And has never seen that part of me. But, on my side of the family, I have, again, a lot of relatives that struggle, but I just say it's worth exploring if you plan to spend the rest of your life with this person. Why not start out on the right foot and delay something, even if, I say this, even if it's kind of like, but the wedding's in 2 months. We've already planned it. I just found out my husband's an alcoholic, or my wife has a cocaine problem, but we already did all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, well, this is your wedding. It's not your attendee's wedding. So what if you just delayed it for a while, and people might get hurt, whatever, but it's like, it's your future. Don't let the pressures of like, well, we got to go through with this just because it's already in play. Well, so I really think exploring it, going to see counselors that deal with addiction therapy, that do things like EMDR or brain spotting, and just helping people maybe uncover some more rocks in their past. Because a lot of people are cross-addicted. They may have the substance abuse thing, but that's covering something up. Was it childhood trauma? Was there sexual abuse as a kid for either one? What else is going on? Because alcohol is just a cover up for what's really going on inside.
Yeah. I really liked what you said there. And this is a big part of why we started Fuel Collective, why we started Date Forever, was this concept that if you've grown up in a family home that you're not that interested in replicating, where on earth do you actually go to learn relationship skills when you examine the patterns of the generations before you and the parents before them and the parents before them? And if that's not something that you're interested in duplicating, where do you go? So I think it's really important that we have these conversations between people that we're talking about, hypothesizing about, having a life with. It's like, what do you want our future to look like? And what did your dynamic look like? And what did my dynamic look like? And what would we like ours to look like? But I don't think these are conversations that people tend to have.
They're weird conversations to have. It's like, hey, you want to go on a date? Let's do a little thing. Hey, by the way, let's talk about our family history on date 3. I don't know anything about mine. Well, why not? And I don't remember my childhood. Well, why not? And it's kind of like finding couple mentors that have good marriages and things like that. And I remember when my wife and I were going through a rough patch. It's kind of like the seasons of up and down. I always say the one thing we love to do well is we like to play board games together. We like to laugh and just be goofy together. We do that. It's just so peaceful and awesome and things like that. And then when you add kind of layers and layers of things on over time, it starts to become hard, and then you don't talk about things. And I'm a big fan of like, don't go to bed angry. When you do, it's not good the next day or after. And I know we've done that before, but don't go to bed angry is not saying you have to hash it out right there, but just saying, hey, right now I'm exhausted. I don't think I can give that much attention to this, but can we talk about tomorrow, like after we get through our day, and carve out time to circle back around with something that's too hard to talk about at 11 o'clock at night, right? But understanding, I guess I was saying, like just kind of like the family history and find a counselor, find a united program to go through. I mean, if you had alcoholic parents, maybe go into adult children of alcoholics is an option to go to learn more about yourself. Or if you're codependent, go to Codependent Anonymous and do those healthy things. And especially if you're single and you like know your family history, man, start working on that stuff now. Be healthy for the person you're going to be with. Because again, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know I needed to work on before I got married to Jen. And if I would have known when I knew I needed to work on then, and she knew what she needed to work on, you come into the marriage kind of more free than, as you say, bringing your baggage, as most people say, like, well, you don't know what your baggage is if you keep losing it.
Yeah. So Rob, you kind of mentioned that with a couple of your different addictions. So with alcohol, you said that like, as soon as you had the first sip, you knew that it was on. Whereas with gambling, it kind of sort of snuck up on you, and it wasn't really until you kind of hit that rock bottom point that you kind of realized that it was really a problem. So how do we kind of start identifying some of those early signs of addiction?
If your eyeballs get really big when you try something at first, that might be a good sign. Because I will say, I didn't say this earlier, but no, I mean, I started gambling at 15 and I loved it. And when I first smoked pot, I loved it. And when I first tried other drugs, I loved it. So I knew for me that when I tried stuff that altered my mind and my sense of being, I knew I was going to like it. So I had to start drawing boundaries along the way. But with the gambling addiction, when that thing completely ended and that was what is it, 2.5? Is it 2.5 years ago? Yeah. So it's only been 2.5 years ago-ish that I broke free from gambling. And that played out through that. The sick thing about gambling, my gambling addiction is I loved to be behind, and it was the pursuit to get ahead. Oh, it was. And it was just like, if I won big, it was just kind of, But if I lost big, it was just this reverse twisted.
I got to get out of it now.
Wow. Yeah.
I got to get out of it.
It's almost like you want to lose, so you have to continue to chase to win. And when you win, like when I would turn $100 and like $10,000, I was like, oh, that was cool. But when I would lose, and then take that 10, lose it, and lose a couple extra $1,000, I'm like, man, darn, okay, now I got to go back tomorrow and do it again. It was crazy. But I saw, again, once I started seeing I needed to work on that, I took steps to work on it, and then went through a year program, the Celebrate Recovery program, to actually break free from gambling. And that's the only thing that helped me. But my eyeballs lit up when I played this game called Bullshit when we were younger, and my buddy Case Whitaker's house. And it was like, there was that game. And I'm like, oh, that was so much fun. So I think I just like to beat myself up.
Hey, Rob, one of the things that we've heard you say is that it's possible to bring the bottom up rather than the person with addiction having to hit rock bottom themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about that concept?
Yes. So you hear most people say, well, we're just going to wait till they hit bottom. And bottom can be a really, really, really long way down, right? And I always say it's kind of like you're on the elevator and you have a chance to get off, but you want to keep going down. And addicts have this insatiable ability to be like, okay, we hit ground floor, but we're still going to go 50 meters below earth and keep going. And so when I think of what I do with my intervention work and I talk to families, because they're calling in crisis, right? It's like, oh my gosh, Fred, Sarah, Billy, Mike, they're freaking out. They're going to die. And it's heightened because they're scared and something happened. I always try to bring them back down and say, let's talk through this real quick. And then it gets to the point of, okay, what's happened? Where are we? And sometimes families aren't ready to do it. Like, well, we're just going to wait till he gets a DUI or he loses the kids or loses his job. And I'll ask, well, why? Why do we need to wait for that? And they say, well, because that's what people do. So, well, let's perceive that. But what if we came with this idea? And we'll kind of like get them to kind of lean in. Like, what are we going to talk about? And I'll say, what if we're able to bring the bottom up to your loved one? And what I mean by that is it's kind of like a gift of love. Bring it to them and say, hey, we love you, your friends, your family, your kids, whomever's involved in the intervention. We love you so much that we're not going to let you drown today. You get to choose if you're going to grab the life preserver we're going to send to you in the ocean as you're drowning, right? You get to choose if you're going to grab it because it's right next to you. So we're going to give you all these offerings and say, hey, we love you so much. Here's how the addiction, because you always attack the addiction, you never attack the person. You don't say, well, you're an addict. It's like, no, when you use substances the way you do, it makes me feel like you don't love me. But I know you love me. And so it's all this way to frame everything up. And there's so much structure to what I do. But it's to say, and then on the intervention day, whatever it looks like, it's, again, multiple ways this can look. But essentially it's, I love you so much. I want to give you some options, A, B, C, and D, maybe E. And just say, if you choose option A, which I know will lead you to the fastest, healthiest way to change your life and not lose your job or your kids or your marriage or whatever's going on in your life, then I'm going to support you 100%. I would say I'm going to support you 100% in your recovery, but not in your addiction. If they're like, well, no, I'm not doing that. Okay, well, option B. Sometimes there's only one option. But option B, well, what if we try this? No, it looks better. No. And then they just get some people to the point like, I'm not doing anything. I don't care what you say. Like, I'm pissed. I'm angry. I'm mad at you. It's your fault. You did this. But the great thing about the intervention structure is there's no name calling. There's no elevated yelling because I'm the ref. I'm like the mediator. Say, hey, everyone's got some stuff to say. I can see it. I will kick people out of the intervention if I need to. If it's disruptive, I'll pull the loved one aside and just say, hey, dude, why don't you and I just talk? Or hey, girl, why don't you and I just talk for like 10 minutes? What's really going on? And then you just got to kind of earn their trust and say, hey, man, this is all for you. You get to choose what you want to do. There's no van outside getting ready to take you with bags over your head and take you to Jamaica for some youth camp or something. You know, it's like you get to choose. But with each choice, there's a different set of ways that your family will love and support you. Because when you look back on this day, you're going to be able to say, I chose that pathway. They gave me a better one, but I chose this one. And there's nothing cooler than when you walk into an intervention and just say, Christy, are you just sick and tired of being sick and tired of this rat race that you're in? Like, don't you just want some help? And when they just go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. No one's ever asked me. They just told me. It's like, all right, let's get in the car. Let's get in the plane. Let's go get some help. And I'm involved the whole way. But really it is bringing the bottom up. And then if they want to crash and burn on their own and go for it, then the family did the best they could, and at least they can identify that day that they put their best foot forward as a family, and their loved one chose.
Yeah, as a family, we all showed up in a way that we're proud of. Yeah. So I want to talk about the other side of this is if someone who's experiencing addiction is in a relationship and that the person they're in a relationship with has been supporting, hand-holding, encouraging, nurturing, standing by their side, at what point should that person walk away? When do they need to take care of themselves and let that addicted person move through their journey?
When that question is burning in their heart, I know it's like the right time to do it. I always tell people right now is the time for you to start getting healthy, whether they get healthy or not, because each person has to get healthy, right? But to continue to do it. And then they're going to know at some point, it's like, look, I'm doing everything I can. I am getting healthier. And because the thing that'll happen is everyone's like, well, what do you do when you get healthy? Because you're the problem. What are you doing? And it's looking at the other person and just knowing that he or she is doing what they can to become the best person they can, whether it's seeing a counselor, a therapist, going to some programs, doing online stuff. I mean, there's so many opportunities, which is why I love being a resource for people. It's just saying, hey, let me give you the resources and you step into it. And sometimes when an intervention happens, it might actually be for the person without the addiction. You know what I mean? Because they're learning the tools, they're doing the work, they're doing what's suggested, they're getting healthy. And they're going to realize, I'm not going down with you. And it might be a separation. It might just say, hey, look, drawing that boundary and said, I've done everything that I can to love you, but you obviously don't. Your addiction, not you, right? Your addiction is causing you to not love me back. So until you're willing to get rid of that and love me, then they have to make those decisions for themselves. And sometimes, Sammy, on the other side of that is loved one goes to get help, comes back healthy, family member does no work, and they're trying to sabotage their loved one's newfound life. And they have to realize, hey, I've got healthy. I went to treatment. I'm learning all these tools. Like, I don't want to go back to that. And you're pulling me down. And then encouraging them to go to treatment and stuff. And it's like, you're the one that I just spent $20,000 on you to go to treatment. You're going to talk to me that way? And it says, hey, if you can take care of yourself, they do like the airplane analogy, right? It's like, put the oxygen mask on you first, then put on your kid. It's like, well, sometimes you need to put on the kid first because if you, whatever, who cares? I don't know why I brought that up. I wanted it to go anyway. But what I will say, because I remember the first intervention I ever did, the wife went to treatment, right? And she got healthy and got help, and she was pissed. She was just like, he's the problem. I know, but everyone's here for you. I can tell he's a problem. He looked at me like, what? I was like, dude, I'm just trying to earn her trust. Stop. Because there's all sorts of games you have to play a little bit. But she went and got healthy and all that stuff. And I don't remember how many months later. She's still sober today. It was the first one I ever did. And it's awesome. But she ended up having to get divorced. Or not having to. She chose to get divorced because he was very unhealthy and did not want to get healthy. And so it's kind of like, you go get help. She came back, told him to get help. He didn't want to get help. She left, and she was the healthier one in the end. But you got to take care of yourself.
And I guess that's the thing. Like, it may be that you choosing to walk away from a relationship may be the bottom that the other person needs to experience to be able to actually make that change for themselves too.
Yeah, it is. And I have done interventions like that. And it's just kind of like, if you're not going to do the work, you chose option D and said, forget you, I'm not doing it, I'm out, And then that person went and got healthy and left, and we'll see. I mean, that might bring someone to it or not. I remember one, it was like, I don't care. I've got 2 affairs going on right now. I'm done with her. This is a waste of money. Like, I was done months ago. I'm just so glad you showed up today so I can finally cut the cord and say I'm out. And that one backfired a little bit, but she had no clue that the affairs were going on or any of that kind of stuff, right? And it was just that kind of like right in your face. Holy cow. So he had checked out way before, which made sense why he was acting the way he did and why she felt the way that she did, right?
So maybe that was a blessing in disguise for both people anyway.
It was, for her. I mean, finding out that way, and it was just kind of like, it all just kind of came out. And I felt so tender for her because she didn't know this, but then it made sense for her to be like, okay, I can walk away in good conscience now because of everything you just told me, and I don't want to reconcile this thing. So, but I will say that the stories I'm telling you, there was addiction in the beginning of the relationship. And everything I've shared tonight, like in each one of those, there was addiction in the beginning of the relationship, and they decided to move forward anyway, right? So what you talked about earlier, Sammy, with that is like just taking those heeds of caution and say, hey, let's postpone. Just postpone it for a little while. We don't even need to tell people why. I said, hey, you know what? Make up a lie. Like, I don't know, whatever. Whatever you need to do if lying's in your nature, just something. But why step into a horrible situation knowing you want it to be for the rest of your life, right? And
yeah, I always use that analogy, like, why keep driving straight ahead when you know you're going to do a U-turn?
Yeah, I like that. That's a beautiful picture.
And it's just so true, right? Like, just because you've already driven for miles or kilometers down this road, it doesn't mean that you have to keep going, especially when you know that you're going to do a U-turn. You're going to have further to come back.
Yeah. Or the bridge is out, but you're still going to keep going. It's like, maybe there's a road below the bridge I don't know about, or the parachute will kick in or something.
So, Rob, we talked about the one outcome of a relationship not surviving someone's journey with addiction, but there has to be some positive stories, right?
Oh, totally. There are. Here's the cool thing when maybe both people have an addiction, right? And they get to that point where it's like, we got to stop this. Like, this is so miserable. What are we going to do? And when it's the what are we going to do, it's really cool because it's, well, we know of this sober community we want to go plug into. We are going to go do it together instead of like, I don't really want to go along with you. But we want a life of sobriety. Maybe they had kids and all of a sudden it's like, we got to change this. Or a situation happened and then they go, let's step into this. So, but even in those situations, each person's working their own program. Because again, you still got to stay healthy like by yourself, but to come together and do that. And I'll tell you some cool things. My wife and I went through like a 4-month kind of marriage intensive, right? And it was great. It talked about false narratives and all these things and revealed things. And out of that became this huge blessing where someone actually gave us an 8-day marriage cruise with this family life ministry. And there were 2,400 couples on this cruise.
Whoa.
Wow.
It was insane. But every speaker on that cruise had a story of despair, and they turned it around. A story of alcoholism, a story of infidelity, a story of this, and spouse stood by spouse and said, we're in this. We committed. I'm in this with you. And it was rough, but they stuck with it. And then you get to look at what they do in these stages and stuff to just inspire and move people. And you're like, man, if they were that messed up, look what God did in their life now. And it all involved addiction and sex addiction and infidelity and just stuff, or just you take addiction out of it, just being just immature, people that aren't able to go intimate and be go deep in someone's heart. But yeah, when you see that, and I see couples that, the spouse finally got it and then they started doing recovery together, and then they realize I got stuff I got to work on, and they work on it together. Oh, it's so dang cool. And then you got generations of kids that have never seen addiction in their families like mine. I have a 14 and a 12-year-old right now. I started using it at 14. And I look at that and I'm like, my wife and I, we've been through a lot of stuff in our marriage, right? But we stuck with it. She stuck with me. And I'd mainly say she stuck with me because I was being the buffoon in a lot of instances, right? Which is why I'm so passionate about what I do now. But our kids, it's like they know that it's possible to live a life without addiction when especially in Colorado, everyone smokes pot here, right? And it's kind of like, hey, we want to try that. But trying stuff leads to other avenues. And when you can align yourselves together and move forward, it's just so cool to watch couples that are going to like football games sober, and they used to be drunk and yell at each other in the parking lot. And it's like, hey, that was a really cool experience. Like we went to a concert and we remember the whole thing and that we danced, and we didn't grope, but we danced. We were connected and moving with the music and not just thinking about like, hey, let's go home and have sex after this. It's like, that'd be great, but we're just connecting now. So it's really awesome when you hear those stories. And then you see fathers that inspire their children to get sober, right? Because they saw drunk dad, and now they're 20-something and they're getting sober because dad got sober. And it's like, man, that's working too. And then they find a healthier girl that doesn't it's just, it can trickle down. But man, it can really spiral out of control fast too if people aren't paying attention to their makeup.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things that you can do for your children is to heal yourself. And I think that's, it's so true, because we want to break those generational patterns and traumas and stop those things from repeating. But I want to go back to something that you said, Rob, about like when couples are in recovery or in a program separately but together. And I just want to echo, like Nathan and I have this concept that there's 8 different fuel tanks in our lives. And at any one time, they're at a level of full to empty. And there's some of them that you overlap and you take responsibility of together as a partner, as a couple, as a romantic relationship. But the one fuel tank that you can't outsource to your partner is that relationship with yourself. That is your responsibility, your health, your mindset, your well-being, your goals, your dreams. Like you cannot outsource that to your partner. You got to own that shit. Your shit is your shit.
Own it. That's right.
Yeah. So what I would love to round out this awesome chat with is there was a time in your life where you had a crappy or non-existent relationship with yourself. What does your relationship with yourself look like now, and how do you keep it fueled up?
I like spending time with myself. I like being silent with myself and just sitting. So I keep it fueled up with just an awesome group of men around me that I get to do life with and challenge each other and keep each other in check. And so that's a huge thing for me. And working out, when I do it regularly, I feel a lot better. When I don't. Like I pulled something behind my knee a couple of days ago, and I'm like, I can't swim right now, and it's killing me. So I find other outlets, because it's not healthy when that one outlet, like if it goes away, then I'm all in a tizzy, right? And then just having a great time as family. I mean, we have a lot of fun family nights and watching movies and playing board games, and we're a busy family, productive. I don't like the word busy. We're a scheduled and productive family, but kids playing competitive sports, and just me with a lot of stuff I have going on and speaking and doing just a lot of cool stuff that's coming down the pipeline this year too. I got to keep that balance. And fortunately, here's the deal. I know when the negative Nelly starts coming in my brain and I start hearing those voices, not really voices, but the like, you're not good enough, and those things start coming back. It's so cool. I can quickly shift to who I really am and kick that negative stuff out like almost instantaneously, where it used to linger a little while. And even pay attention to like, my wife, when she can tell I'm off a little bit, and just say, what's going on? Because when I'm in the middle of like interventions, it's draining. So I have to do that self-care and just really keep myself in check. But, I spend a lot of time reading my Bible, listening to worship music, working out, enjoying God's country and nature. And I love to be outside. And I love podcasting. That's healing for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So what do you then do within your romantic relationship to keep that fueled up?
Yeah, well, again, we love just carving out time to literally just play Scrabble, or not Scrabble. I don't know why I said Scrabble. I shouldn't have said it. Yahtzee. My wife hates Scrabble because I love words and stuff. But we would love to, again, just play games, go on little coffee dates, even dates with our kids is really important too, because there's that relationship that needs to be healthy and good. But going on, family ski trips. And I'll tell you this real quick. Once I kicked gambling, I had a healthy relationship with money, because before I would look at family trips and stuff as like, oh, that's going to be expensive. But I could run off to the casino with a bunch of money. And if I lost it, oh, big deal, right? Hypocrite. So now that I have a better relationship with money, I can look at stuff like, investing in family trips and doing things as a family is really huge for thriving for our marriage as well. But just, doing little special things and dropping little notes here and there. And, my wife wishes I gave her more back rubs than I do. And so that could be probably something I could bump up a notch after this a little bit too. But just trying to stay connected and not let things get swept under the carpet, talk through issues, talk through money, talk through important things that are things that tear families apart. But fortunately, again, once you have better relationships with your spouses and friends, and I will say my men's group has really helped me with that, with my intimate relationship with my wife.
Yeah, I love
amazing.
that. I think, our relationships with others, our friends, family, peer, like we need them. We need people to celebrate with and commiserate with, not just our romantic partner and not just our relationship with ourselves, but others as well.
Yeah, it's huge. I want to touch on one quick little thing. So I remember I went on a men's retreat once, this was a long time ago, and Jen and I were just in a rough spot, right? We've had a few rough spots and really good spots, and it's marriage. And I remember going there and they said, well, tell us about your relationships. And I started just complaining about mine. And they all started laughing so hard. And I'm like, I didn't think that was really that funny. And they said, well, Rob, you came to the wrong place, because one thing we committed to do as a group of men is we will never talk negatively about our spouse to another person. And you have a close friend you can process stuff with, right? But you will in this group, you will never hear us talk poorly about our wives or intimate struggles we're going through with other people except for our spouses. And I was like, what a great rule. Like, what a great rule to live by. And I adopted that rule, and it was awesome. And I saw her in a totally different light. And that was a great season of just looking beyond the struggle, but look at the person whom I love and just trying to stay dialed into her.
Yeah. We've got some friends, and that's like a go-to conversation is them like blowing off steam about their person. And more often than not, like they're having a whinge, letting it out. Yeah. But then you ask them, like, have you talked to them about this? And the answer's no. Like, okay, well, why are you telling me for? Like, it'd be different if you'd had the conversation, hit a wall, and then you were rebounding to get some fresh ideas. But if you've not even had the conversation with your person, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And I go back to journaling. It's like, if I journaled about it, have I spent quiet time with God about it? Because most of the time it's really about me and my own insecurities or fears that are coming up because I haven't checked myself on something for a little while. Because usually when you're in an argument with somebody or something's going on, 9 times out of 10, I would just say it's really about the person that's arguing, not about the person that's receiving the argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something that's been triggered there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's like, why? What's being triggered? What is it? Is it fear? Because fear, it's like if it's anger is a second emotion. So it usually goes down to fear. And we always say at the bottom of the iceberg, there's fear. It's all hidden up by all this other stuff right here, pride, all this stuff. But at the bottom of it, there's some fear that's going on about something. And if you don't have people to talk to about and getting real that know you about those fears, the triggers, those things, even seasons in life, something's coming up around a big incident. And you're like, hey, wait, isn't that thing, the anniversary coming up next week about that? Yeah. well, what can you do around creating a better memory around this date that's going on? So it's a positive thing to look forward to instead of like, oh my gosh, I can't remember that happened like 8 years ago. It's, hey, remember last year we did that really cool thing? Let's do that again. And it kind of it waters down a little bit the negative experience of a date. Then you can make it a positive thing with your spouse and maybe eventually laugh it off.
Yeah. And humans are meaning-making machines. So if we can make a new meaning and attach good memories and good patterns to that, it can totally transform how we experience things.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll show you this because it's kind of cool. So there were times I did not believe this in my marriage. So I brought this little thing out. This is our 14th anniversary, but my wife had this thing made. If you can see what it says.
All right. But because we're on a visual, an audio only.
Audio, you can't hear it, but it's this picture my wife did. It said, I love you to pieces. And it looks like a puzzle of us. And it was a picture that was made into a puzzle. And, and there were times in our marriage where I would hear that, but I just wouldn't believe it. I just wouldn't believe that because I didn't feel like I was good enough to receive it. And I didn't feel like our actions spoke to that moment. But now I can hear that and I can receive that and believe that because I know it's true. And we can't let our circumstances dictate how we feel about each other because the bottom line is I love her. She loves me. In the moment, it doesn't feel like it. But the truth is, that's the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like when I get back to the truths about what God says about me. And when there's something that comes in that is negative and opposite of that, I can poo-poo it right away and say, that is not true about me. This is what God says about me. And that's how I live my life. And that just bears so much fruit for me to step into positivity instead of negativity.
Yeah. Rob, thank you so much for sharing with us today. To say thank you, we've made a contribution to a sports program in India. So yes, it's a sports program, but they use it as a way to promote healthy lives and promote healthy well-being for teenagers, really, and help them develop some skills that they need.
Awesome.
So it's been made possible via our partnership with Buy One, Give One. So thank you so much for making that happen. It creates a really cool ripple effect.
Yeah, it gave me goosebumps. That was cool.
Yeah.
No worries. So Rob, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about addiction or a little bit more about what you do, how should they do that?
Well, if they feel comfortable enough, and I always say that because when I say this, I mean I'm making myself available to talk to people. That's why I do what I do. And I've given out my phone numbers before and I've run into people a year later and they go, yeah, you gave your phone number out on this thing I heard a year ago, but I didn't think you were serious about me calling you. So I do throw my phone number out, but I also have a link they can go to and literally just schedule a call with me. And it can be a video call or a phone call or whatever, but just to make that easier on people with their schedules, it's just a domain name. It's recoverwithrob.com.
Yeah,
we'll pop it in the show notes.
Yeah, recoverwithrob.com and literally just schedule some time to talk to me on my calendar that works for your schedule, no matter where you are. And I have my limit. It's kind of, I don't answer the phone at 2 a.m, but I just want people to know that I'm here to talk through, and whether I'm the right guy to help you or colleagues around the country. I know tons of people all over the country that can help people all over the world. So that's my goal, is to connect people to the right people.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if any of what we've been chatting about today has had your spidey senses tingling, reach out and have a conversation, because like Rob sort of said, these things don't have to play out and hit rock bottom. You can have an intervention. You can change the direction of your path sooner. So please reach out. And thank you so much for being with us today, Rob.
Yep. God bless y'all. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.